Okay, so score number 12 is from Dave, and I've just really enjoyed this one for its its free use of different auxiliaries throughout. Um, so we've got alto flute doubling on second flute here, and oboe d'amore. So in A, right? Which it's kind of funny when you have a score. When you have a transposing instrument in A and you give it a five flats concert pitch, then it comes out as four sharps, right? So the d'amore is reading E major when the original key was D flat. So yeah, that's just really fun. Okay, and English horn is pretty standard auxiliary, clarinet and B flat. That's all good. And then we've got basset horn. Very fun. So basset horn is, if you don't know of it, it is a clarinet that's pitched in F, and it is essentially like an alto clarinet, but not exactly. Some basset horns are built with slightly narrower bores, which gives them a kind of a different quality. But interestingly, modern basset horns are being built with larger and larger bores, to sort of match the alto clarinet and maybe stabilized a little bit. Alto clarinet has a bit of a reputation for not being that great of an instrument, although some good ones have been built, and I have heard some good ones that sort of belie that reputation. But anyhow, and then bass clarinet, which is kind of, it's almost like having violin, viola, and cello, right? That's sort of the counterparts, right? The clarinet in B flat is like a violin, similar to a violin in range. Basset horn is similar to a viola. Of course, both of these instruments going deeper than the counterparts I'm suggesting. And then bass clarinet in B flat, which can now go, all the way down to cello C, right? And below, actually. So yeah, and bassoons, right? So now onto the brass. So we got four horns in F. That's all great. And then we've got two flugelhorns instead of, I guess as a substitute for B-flat trumpets, and then we've got two euphoniums, which I guess would be a substitute for trombones, and then tuba. Then, timpani, cymbals, bass drum, harp, and so on. Okay, so let's hear what Dave makes of that, and then we'll come back for a little bit of score analysis. Once again, a highly individualistic arrangement, and I just really love the way that there is so much attention to detail in certain places, and really more focus on string scoring than in previous scores I've seen from you, Dave. I think you've got as I remember correctly, you are already pretty experienced in some wind scoring, wind band scoring, and other things like that. So yeah, so definitely, it just really seems like it's progressing from other arrangements that you've had. When we did, we had scoring challenges like this on the Orchestration Online website, and then I would just like type everything out in text for my evaluations, which just just took such a long time to do it that way. So. Yeah, so we're just doing longer evaluations on videos for the Patreon members, and then shorter ones, shorter compilations for Facebook members, which seems to be going pretty well right now. But anyways, yeah, I remember your older scoring challenge entries, which were pretty cool. So this is really nice. This this kind of swirling background. Now, I think, if there are any critique that I could offer here, and that is that I think that you could divide this amongst, instead of just having it move across the section like this, you could actually have violas and cellos playing together, playing these four notes together, and then dovetailing to this B flat here within the violas. And then the second and first violin playing the same notes, and then coming back down, and then dovetailing back on this G flat here. And then the violas and the cellos come back in. So I think that you could just have more strings on it and have more of a cool swirling background. Now I feel that the dynamics are a bit micromanaged. I think that you could just basically just say the accompaniment was P, and the melody would be mezzo forte or P crescendo, right? So you could have added nuances to bring the melody out in front more, or since you're already doubling here, oboe d'amore and alto flute, right? You essentially, but it's actually kind of interesting here. If you are up on your transposing, you'll see that actually these two are an octave apart, right? So this is B flat below middle C, and this is B flat above middle C, right? Because it's you're reading everything up a minor third. Or it's sounding down a minor third from where it's written, right? So if this is a C sharp, then it is a B flat in the staff, right? So B flat, concert B flat 4. So yeah, so this was a really neat combination in octaves, and I've been cautioning people against scoring octaves too much, and I see what Dave is doing here. He doesn't want the d'amore to be too loud compared to the alto flute. He wants to push the alto flute out in and to really have it broadcast. So I mean, yeah, it just gets to be fiddly in terms of like who is what, right? But I think you could just mark everybody piano, right? And then just if you wanted some of these elements to be a little softer, pianissimo, right? And then these guys could be P, crescendo, right? And I think it would still balance. I think it would still be okay. But I respect what you're doing here, and this is going to help it balance out in terms of playback. But that's all right. Okay. And I noticed that there are some strategic places where you've left out the slurs. Okay? And they actually bring some life to the music. Like here and there is really, really nice. And there was this other spot. Yeah, right here. So you've left out this, da 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 da, right? And it just really connects things together because of not being staccato. Okay? All right. And this kind of continues on, just gets more people added on, right? We've got bass clarinet and bassoon coming in. We've got first flute and clarinet coming in. And, just kind of essentially doing some doubling there. And letting the d'amore just take a break, right? And here, I would say don't do this unless you really want the lines to feel like they're splitting apart, right? It would be better for you just to mark an eighth note here, and then to have the flutes come in on that note, right? Or to mark this first written E here, and then have the flute and clarinet come in on this concert D flat, right? And then that would be a much more natural dovetail than what you've got scored here. Okay, I like the basset horn sort of doing a viola-like harmonization here. That's very, very cool. Couldn't help wondering whether or not if there is staccato in the double bass, whether or not, staccato on some of these notes might not have been more appropriate. Anyways, just a thought there. Okay, now you got your little chuck, 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 chuck. Okay, and this is interesting because you're still in the opening, in this opening theme. So this is kind of subverting the original intention for the syncopation in there, right? So you still have those syncopated elements in terms of the melody, and in this English horn line here of the harmony, which adds rhythmic emphasis to the idea of 3/2. And then against that, you're putting the chuck chuck in the strings, and I think that's just a wonderfully effective perverse touch, And when I say perversity, I don't mean anything bad. I just mean it's just like it just kind of goes against the grain so much that it is, it's just almost wildly amusing in a way. I just think it's really, really cool. So D'Amore and basset horn are now doing the doubling at first, and that is kind of cool. In this case, the basset horn, anything with a name horn on it, English horn, basset horn, and regular horn or French horn, all have the same. They have the same reading. Okay, so they all transpose, or they all are sounding down a fifth, written up a fifth, up a perfect fifth. Okay, and so this is actually a B flat once again. And here we've got the D'Amore once again, exactly kind of like this time. It's sort of it's reading up a bit, and this is kind of interesting. It's not necessarily it's not really playing the melody again. Like this is not an octave at all, right? So it's more of a harmonization, all right. And I think that is really, really cool the way that was done. Because if it were otherwise, were it otherwise, were the D'Amore basically just playing the same thing again, then you would have no variety to this, right? It would just be the same idea with a slightly different color, slightly different tone color about what was being done there, right? So essentially, the basset horn and the violas are doubling, and they are basically the same kind of instrument. They're that same middle voice instrument that has some acoustic limitations or some sonic limitations on them. Okay, bassoons come in to join in, and then you just get this wonderful little line here. It's just really, it's just really worth listening to see how this all kind of fits together and how this all works, I just think it's really fun. So moving on, we're really using a lot of D'Amore. And, that's only natural because there is no regular oboe part per se. It's just, it's just the oboe d'amore doing its thing. And so here we can see that just sort of like the slight difference between the tuning of these two instruments, the B-flat clarinet and the oboe d'amore in A, right, that these are actually the same pitch, right? And actually they're written kind of as the same, but with different key signatures. But F is going to sound E-flat in in a B-flat transposing instrument. F sharp is also, which is a half step higher, right? F sharp in the key signature is also going to sound E flat in the in an A transposing instrument, right? So they don't look all that different But if you look at the actual tuning of each note compared to its key signature, there definitely is everything is a half step apart written, but sounding the same below. So that's really kind of fun. I mean, if you really want to know what is going on there, it's twisting your brain around. Just look right here at the violas and use your alto clef reading, right? Or just think up an octave from this euphonium part, which is fun. We're throwing in the euphonium, which is being used in the same register as the tuba, the trombone. And this is all very playable, and in fact, maybe kind of a little easier to finger in some ways. There could have been more. There could have been more slurs and other kinds of things added here. You could have matched, perhaps better to match the violin slurring on the euphonium rather than just leaving it blank. See, right here you have 3 different models of how to slur or phrase this passage, and I would say it would be better for it to be more unified. And once again, you don't really need piano here, mezzo piano there, pianissimo here and there. I think it's better to have everybody be P, except the accompaniment figures in the brass be marked pianissimo, right? Or everybody be mezzo piano and the brass be piano. The euphonium is not going to be really all that hugely powerful, but it still can project. So you could mark this down or not. It doesn't really matter. I don't think. Not so much. But yeah, to make the flugelhorn and the second violins balance a little bit better, what you could do is just take the upper part here in the second violins and give it to the first violins. And then you have twice as many violins per voice on that, without it necessarily being big. Okay, really neat harmonization up here on the flutes. I like that a lot. It's very, very cool. Okay, moving onwards. Yet-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, which leaves us English horn, second violins, and we've sort of traded. The violas are now sort of playing the upper, something that was similar to what the flutes were doing. And it's, kind of revoicing where the harmony sits. And, more chucks from the horns. And I like this in here. This is kind of a cool little sort of chorale section, solving some of those problems. Okay, and tuba taking over the euphonium part. It's going to be a pretty solid solo down there, but the tuba players will really enjoy getting something interesting to play. So what we've got here is we've got a triple octave, right? Use your reading. Remember, English horn, basset horn, and horns have the same reading, right? So this is A flat, and this is sounding A flat, right? And then an octave below them is the tuba, an octave above them are the second violins. I feel that, had you added, say, d'amore or maybe one of the flutes to this, it would have been a little bit more stable compared to the other instruments that it's playing with. Probably the most stable of all would be first violins on this, second violins playing the same thing as the English horn and basset horn. Okay, that would probably be the most stable of all, but that's all right. Then you got this nice big sweep up here, and A2 flutes. Doubling first violins, second violins are being doubled by no one. Okay, you could have had flutes an octave apart here and spread out across there, because 2 flutes is not going to make that top line any louder than 1 would. It's just, it is just sort of a more slightly cushioned sound, or a more spread sound. So it'd be better to just drop the, if you just wanted. But then, then when you get really down to, you get below A, and it's almost like you're throwing those notes away, aren't you? So anyways, there are ways around this. Maybe you could have had the English horn, but then English horn will be up on a B flat when it comes in. So yeah, I mean, there are things that you could do here. I'm trying to avoid saying, oh, just give it to the oboe d'amore, but I suppose you could have d'amore on the lower voice. So anyways, but there are different ways of scoring that, but all good. Once again, I think the accompaniment figures are really fun. Okay, and then you got this big sweep up here to this high A flat. We've gotten to the appassionata section, and here is where I question the skimpiness of the accompaniment here. You've got the potential, Dave, to do a big, massive tutti here, and even to build to it, right? To build up to it, these winds in here could be slowly adding themselves, insinuating themselves, right? But we've got no horns, no flugelhorn. We've got none of these winds in the middle. We just have flute above, and you already have flute doubling the violins, right? So there's nothing new to say there. So we've got the octave strings. We've got the counter melody being played by cellos. We got boop boops. Keep going with the boop boops. You've got your bass line being played by tuba and by the bassoon coming in above. And I feel this needs to be reworked. If you were to make this more final, I would say add instruments here, right? You could have spread the counter melody on a triple or quadruple octave, right? So you could have just scratched the boop boops and just had this line being played by the violas, the bottom line played by the cellos, right? And then you could have had both of those instruments doubled by the horns, and then you could have had your oboe d'amore play yet another octave above that, and then the English horn double the middle voice there, and you could have had something supporting this. Maybe the d'amore on this. I don't know. There's just a bunch of different ways that you could have done this that would have added more, just more firmness, and also the flugelhorn, right? The flugelhorn could have just really, played the heck out of a third octave below, right? For this thing here, you could have had the second violins in divisi octaves, and then the flugelhorn playing that bottom note of that octave, and then the d'amore playing the middle note of the triple octave, and then of course and then here you could have, and this is interesting. This is a harmonization. It's not the actual note. So you could have had this harmonization, and then the first flute on the top playing along with the first violin, right? And then, so there's just a bunch of different ways that you could have done this, right? But there's just a lot of flute plus violins everywhere, right? So for quite a while. So, and then they even come in on the cool down, right? So there's just more things that, I challenge your imagination here. I think you can come up with some better strategies there, but that's all right. I don't have time to go over any revisions, but just think about that, bigger tutis, having somewhere to go and somewhere to come back down from. Fortissimo here on bass clarinet is going to be basically everything that you can hear here. It's going to be so huge, right? So forte, right? And then coming down to pianissimo. Right. That's cool. All right, and then bassoon, da da da, and cellos, da 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 da, and then right, English horn plus second violins. This is going to be a bit high. See, it's strange. You got mezzo forte here and piano there on the second violin. So the second violins is going to be barely anything but a flavor behind the English horn, right? They could both be marked softer, but you still have to worry about hitting, just slurring up to this C over and over again, which is not it's doable on English horn, but it's not really the strength of the English horn of these really upper notes. And, playing, this is like better of an oboe thing. This is more of an oboe d'amore kind of a region right here to score along to. So anyways, and then you've got your question and answer. Bum, ba, bum, ba, bum, bum. Once again, too much finessing of the dynamics. Try to pick a dynamic level and score onto the dynamic level, right? Rather than mixing instruments. Cello, euphonium, bassoon, and bass clarinet. That's going to be a solid sound, right? So you might as well mark everybody piano, or else it's going to be pretty much all about the bass clarinet and the euphonium. So I'd say mark everybody P, right? And then you'll have more of a balance there. And then the answer, da 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 da, flugelhorn. It's really nice. Everything is really sort of blended and mixed together. It would have been nice to hear just a single flugelhorn line here. Would have been just really beautiful and very eloquent. Okay, and then we've got our we've got the final line, which is interesting, a crescendo into the final line. Flutes and English horn. Yeah, so just it's very going to be very, very, very dense. I like the idea of the very background horns. Okay, and then it actually gets up to the forte dynamic, okay, before kind of wisping away. Yeah, and then the little tuba. Yeah, it's going to be a big fat jump down there. Yep, boom. Okay, but look, props for correctly notating the artificial harmonics, and this was really pretty the way that you scored this too. So look, Dave, really cool score. I mean, it's a score that starts a discussion is a score that is really especially welcome on the orchestration online group, and I felt that that this is one that really is worthy of one of those like 100 100 response threads that we get. It's like, well, no, you could have put this here and that there, or what, why not just 2 bass clarinets, or like alto flute? How have you thought about tenor flute? And so on and so on. Just like people just adding all of these crazy suggestions or really out there suggestions. But it's just such a neat little idea. I think it would be really expensive to bring all these people together, and even harder to find people who had all of these auxiliary instruments in really good condition, because those would have to be like top players in big cities. But it's possible, it would need some reworking, I would say. Maybe lighten up a lot of these textures and take away some of the very, very big doublings. And then I think you would have just really, eloquent score. I would have liked to have heard these auxiliaries in more exposed individual solos rather than in mixed groups like this. But it was still very, very fun. Okay, so I really enjoyed this, Dave. So now on to score number 13 out of 18.